This is a side without the e.l.f. CC Cream, and this is a side with the e.l.f. CC Cream. Let's find out if the new e.l.f. Camo Hydrating CC Cream works on acne-prone, textured, oily skin. If you're new to my foundation reviews, I'm going to be sharing a little bit about the claims of this foundation, if I think the shade that I picked out actually matches my skin or not, and if I also think the shade range is good or bad. After that, I'll go into the application process and the 6-hour wear test of this foundation. And make sure you watch the video to the very end so you can find out my final rating of the CC cream. I will be rating it based upon the claims, the shade range, the price, and if it's something that I would recommend if you have acne-prone, textured, oily skin. So with all of that being said, let's go on and try the new e.l.f. Camo Hydrating CC Cream. The main thing that it's claiming is that it is hydrating. It is hydrating, and it's supposed to be good for apparently all skin types. And because it's a CC cream, it usually has sunscreen in it. In the e.l.f. one, it has SPF 30, but of course make sure you're wearing sunscreen underneath, because usually a sunscreen in makeup products is not enough to protect your skin. It's just an added layer of protection. And then the last and major claim is that it's supposed to give you full coverage. And as you know, as I said a million times, I have acne prone skin, I have a lot of redness on my skin. I'll show you a before of how my skin looks before I apply on the CC cream. I am kind of going through it a little bit with some zits here and there because I am going to get my period pretty soon. But truthfully, this is the best my skin has looked in a really long time. My skincare seems to be really working. I've been really hydrated. So aside from the few zits here and there I get from just hormonal reasons, I really do think that my skin is in a good place. So it's gonna give this foundation a pretty good shot. They do have a pretty big shade range, and honestly, I think I'm gonna give this a pretty good rating. There's 6 different categories for their shade range, and they all seem to be really gradual between light to deep. They have a really light fair color, and they have a pretty deep rich color. So to see this be a little bit more balanced, I feel like most people might have luck with it. The shade I ended up picking is 280N, and the reason why I chose this shade was because last time with the original Camo CC cream, I chose the shade 330W, and it just ended up being too deep and orange for me, so I figured I would go a bit lighter and maybe go with more of their neutral undertone if their CC cream runs a bit warmer than I expected it to be, because sometimes online swatches are just not reliable. In my opinion, I think the medium shade range probably lacks a little bit. I wanted to pick 330W, but then I just was scared it was going to be too deep for me, and then I didn't want to pick 310C because that felt too cool toned. And because I ended up with the shade 280N, I would probably warn you that you might need to go a shade or two lighter than you think you might be, because my guess is that the shade range runs deeper than we might expect. Also, I forgot to mention that this retails for $15, which I think is higher than it used to be. The old e.l.f. Camo CC cream, I want to say it was like $10 to $13 at one point, but of course, inflation, everything is just getting so much more expensive. So let me just show you what the color match looks like. That's actually not that bad. I think that it matches my neck really well. It's just gonna be a trouble with my forehead, which is usually what happens. And just for context, I did apply sunscreen underneath. I know a lot of y'all want me to show the sunscreen I'm wearing underneath because it makes a big difference. So this is the Madagascar Centella Water Fit Sun Serum with SPF 50. This is a Korean sunscreen if you're interested. I am planning to film a whole video trying Korean sunscreens, so I'll keep you updated on how much I like this. All right, I guess I'll just go in with the rest of my fingers. I'm just gonna do a little bit of a wipe. And on this side, I'm using a sponge just to see kind of what coverage we're working with here. Yeah, actually, I don't think that the match is that bad. It's just a bit concerning to me that this color is in the light category. Oh, you can start to see that it might be too light for my skin. But again, nothing I can't really work around. I think the actual tone of the CC cream works well. And this is where you can see on the forehead, it's slightly too light. My forehead is darker than the rest of my face because that's where the sun hits, but that's why we have bronzer. This is what the skin currently looks like with the CC cream, skin without the CC cream. I'm gonna add one more pump because I just want some more coverage on the skin. If you made it this far into the video, then comment some confetti emojis for the new year. There we go. That little zit right here is now covered, at least the redness is covered. This is a side without the e.l.f. CC cream, and this is a side with the e.l.f. CC cream. So I'm pretty happy with how the CC cream blended with the sponge. Even though it's with a sponge, I do feel like I got enough coverage and my skin looks really healthy, glowy, and hydrated. And the color is not that bad actually. Like I think that this is a decent match for my skin tone. Now on the other side, I'm gonna use the, I don't know what brush this is called, but it's from Hourglass. I'll link it in the description with my affiliate link and see if I get more coverage. I usually prefer to use a foundation brush just because I always want the best amount of coverage I can get, and you could already see the brush picked up a lot and I am blending this a lot faster than the sponge. That was pretty good. With the brush, I didn't need to do 2 layers. I got the coverage that I feel like the CC cream gives, which is the medium coverage. It was really easy to blend out, not streaky. Again, I used a sponge and then I used this foundation brush and I went in with some patting motions. I think if you were to use the wrong brush, this is a formula that could be streaky just because it is a very like moisturizing, hydrating formula. So you have to be really careful with that. But when you go in with patting motions and use a dense brush or a sponge, I don't get any streaks when applying on this foundation. On the skin, I'm not gonna lie, it feels slightly heavy, but I'm just wondering if I just need to let that sit a little bit. Honestly, it's very close to full coverage. It's medium to full coverage, so I would give them points to be true to their claims because there's a lot of foundations that claim to be full coverage, and on my skin, it's just light to medium coverage at best. But with the brush, I really didn't have to go in with too many layers. I could really just leave it like this, not applying any more concealer, and I'd be pretty satisfied and happy. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the rest of my makeup, and I'll be back with some more thoughts. I did cut my bangs earlier this week for the new year, and I'm kind of happy with them. I haven't had these kind of bangs in a long time, and I don't think I've ever really done like curtain bangs before, so they're kind of a little bit to get used to, and I can't stop touching them. But back to the CC cream, I applied on the rest of my makeup, and I found that they all worked as normal. I didn't apply on a setting spray because, of course, we are doing a wear test, so I don't want that to affect what the CC cream looks like on the skin. I'm really happy with how glowy and hydrating, healthy it makes my skin look, and then with the powder on top, it's way less greasy, way less glowy, and to me, it's a little bit more balanced for my skin. But I do think it is going to be one of those foundations that after 6 to 8 hours, it's going to be very, very glowy in ways that I don't love. But as for the reliability of how it looks on the texture, it's not breaking apart, it doesn't sink into weird lines in my skin, and I think that just has to do with how hydrating this foundation is, so that's a really good sign. I'm honestly gonna give it full coverage. I think that it's pretty true to its claims when they say full coverage, because most of my redness, if not all of my redness, has been fully covered. A lot of my dark spots was covered. I felt like I didn't need to add a lot more concealer than I usually do with some foundations, and even my acne spots right here, I find them to be as covered as they can be. So far, the only downside that I see about the CC cream is that it feels kind of heavy on the skin. It is supposed to be really moisturizing, and because of that, I just think for me, it's just kind of wet on the skin. Once I set it, I think that texture kind of goes away, but initially I do feel like I just have something like sitting on top of my skin, and I'm not a fan of that when it comes to foundation. I'm really particular about that. So that's a downside that would kind of make me not want to keep reapplying this on a daily basis in comparison to my other foundations, because I have a lot of lightweight foundations that maybe gives less coverage, but I like the finish a little bit better. I'll go ahead and do a 6-hour wear test and I'll update you to show you how it looks at the end of the day. This is what my skin looks like after about 6 hours. Keep in mind, I didn't use setting spray or bake my face, so considering that, I think that my skin looks pretty freaking good. I used blotting sheets a few times throughout the day, so as expected, it doesn't have too much oil control, especially around my T-zone, but I don't have high expectations for any foundations to do that really. I usually just rely on my powder to help with oil control, especially for a hydrating CC cream. That's not really an expectation that I have. I did notice some fading on my chin from naturally touching my face throughout the day, and my acne spot on the left is starting to show through. So I wouldn't consider this CC cream a long-lasting product on its own. I would prefer to use it with a primer because it's just not transfer proof and can rub off easily. I think that it might work really well with the Power Grip primer, so whenever I try that, I'll keep you updated in the comments. All right, now that that's done, it is time to chat a little bit about my final ratings of the e.l.f. Camo Hydrating CC Cream. Honestly, I'm kind of surprised with this one. I thought because it was a hydrating CC cream, it wasn't going to feel like it was meant for someone like me. It wasn't going to be something that I could recommend. It was going to be super greasy and oily, but sometimes a hydrating foundation is what you need, because matte foundations, satin foundations can be a little too drying for the skin and can make your makeup look cakey. And for this one, I felt it just created a nice base for the rest of my makeup. So for the claims of this foundation, I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5 because this was as they claim to be: full coverage, hydrating, dewy. But what I am taking a point off for is the long-lasting claim, because it could just mean so many different things. Like, is it long-lasting in the rain? I would say no. Is it long-lasting in humid weather? I would say no, because my oily skin will end up sweating this off. It's also not transfer proof. Like, if this rubs off on a white t-shirt, it's gone. And that's the biggest downside for hydrating, glowy, dewy foundations. You really need to set it with a good primer and a good setting spray in order for this to be truly long lasting, in my opinion at least. Now for shade range, I would say this is an improvement in comparison to their e.l.f. original Camo CC Cream. I think with that CC Cream, they did have to make improvements and add on to the shade range, but even then, I just felt like it ended up being a little too orange on me and I could never find the right shade. But for this one, I got 280N and I felt pretty good about how it looks on the skin. I did have to balance it out a little bit with bronzer, but that's really nothing new. So I'm gonna give this a solid 4 out of 5. I'm knocking off a point only because I still feel like the medium shade range could have a little bit more extension to it, at least based on, you know, medium shades. And last but not least, this retailed for a solid $15. And again, I swear I remembered the e.l.f. original Camo CC Cream being $10, but I could be totally wrong. Even then, I think $10 to $15 is a little pricey for the drugstore. I just wish the drugstore wasn't gonna start competing with high-end prices, because they are getting this close. Like, how much more can you inflate these prices before you're not considered an affordable product anymore? Now the big question is, would I recommend this if you have acne-prone, textured, oily skin? And surprisingly, yes, I would. I don't know if it would be like my #1 recommendation. I do need a little bit more time to really compare it to what I already have. But if you are wondering if this is worth buying, if you have acne-prone, textured, oily skin, I don't really think you would be disappointed with this. It does give you a glowy finish, but with powder, it sets. It is hydrating on the skin. So if you have oily skin, but it's a dehydrated skin, which is what I have, I feel like this would work really well on you. And And if you have acne-prone skin, this gives you a solid full coverage. The only caveat is, you know, you have to make sure you use a good powder, maybe even use a good setting spray, but there's so many good powders and setting sprays in the drugstore that I don't find that to be a downfall of this CC cream. So if you're interested in something that's a little bit more hydrating because you're tired of like satin, matte finishes, I really think that for a hydrating, dewy finish CC cream, this is still something someone with acne-prone, textured, oily skin would like. But because it doesn't have, you know, the best long-lasting capabilities, it's not transfer-proof. Like if I itch my face, I'm getting foundation on my fingers. I wouldn't put it under the category yet of the best for acne-prone, textured, oily skin. So those are my final thoughts on the e.l.f. Camo Hydrating CC Cream. If you're interested in watching more foundation reviews, I'll link it in the description and somewhere in the video here. I do have an entire playlist that you can watch. And I also plan on filming more foundation reviews in the year 2024, so be sure to subscribe. And just in case this comes out before New Year's Eve or after New Year's, Happy New Year's to you. I cannot wait to see what this year brings for both of us. But as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you on the flip side.